If we look at the word Iman, which is faith, it's translated generally as faith, Iman. Its root is 3 letters. Alif, Mim, Nun. Amina means to be safe or secure. To be safe or secure. Iman is a verbal noun that comes from, there's 15 forms of every verb. So you literally, each verb is going to create a whole semantic field by which you'll get nuances of the meanings of the word. Iman is from a 4th form out of the 15 forms that literally means to make oneself safe and secure. So the idea here is that faith is an anchoring element in the human experience. And lack of faith is something that creates a type of trouble, of turbulence within the psyche itself. Now we can see this if you're going into surgery. You'll hear somebody say, well, I have faith in my doctor. Because you don't want to go into surgery not having faith in your doctor. You're going to be a wreck. Right? You're going to be a wreck. There's going to be a lot of trauma related to that experience. So the idea of faith as a securing factor in the human condition. Now there's a wonderful, in the Greek tradition, Prometheus gives man fire, which is knowledge. And then Prometheus is cursed by the gods, because the gods don't want to have man to have knowledge, because man's going to compete with the gods. Prometheus, once he's on the rock in Achilles' play, and he's Prometheus bound, and they're asking him what he was given, what he gave to man. He said, I gave him fire and I taught him the crafts, right? And then he said, what else? And he said, I gave him faith. In other words, without faith, the human being is in a hopeless state, right? So there's an idea that that we need faith. If we have all the knowledge in the world, if we know how to do all these things, but we don't have faith in the future, in tomorrow, we go into a state of despair. And human beings cannot function in a state of despair. A study that they did with rats, where they would put a rat, this is horrible things that scientists do, but sometimes they come up with interesting results. They put a bunch of some rats in in water, and then they would let the rats swim until they would drown, right? Well, what they started to do, they'd time it and they'd say the rats would survive a few minutes. Right before the time that they would normally drown, they would pull them out and save them. And they would do this over and over again. Then they would leave those same rats who had been pulled out and saved and they would go sometimes twice or more than they would normally do had they not been pulled out of the cauldron. So the idea is that even the rat has a concept of hope. That even the rat, as insignificant as its brain is, has a concept of hope. That I might be saved, so I'm going to hang on a little longer. Now there's a story, one man asked a man once if he believed in God. He said no. And he said, well, let me ask you something. He said, if you fall off a ship in the middle of the ocean, do you just give up? And he said, no, I continue to swim. And he said, why? And he said, out of the hopes of being saved. And he said, that's God. You see that there is within us this odd mechanism in our own psyches that says, I'm not going to give up. And this is rooted in this idea of wanting to make oneself secure, of wanting to be in a state of security. So the believer, according to the Islamic tradition, is called a mu'min. Somebody who is making themselves safe. How? How do you make yourself safe? In a world of absolute change, we see change everywhere. We have no sense of security in this world. A person who's in a secure state is in a delusional state. Really, if you think about this. If you feel secure at all times, then you're in a delusional state. Especially in California, right? Because I live in California, we hear those shakes every once in a while. Just to remind you, it's not that secure. right? We are literally, as human beings, constantly exposing ourselves to death in every instant. Each breath is an exposure to death. And because of that, there's a deep instability. Now, there's a type of veiling that takes place as a mercy. Because if we were constantly aware of this state, right, we would be literally wrecks, psychological wrecks. And there are people that go into these states. One of the things Lewis Thomas mentions in one of his essays is the whole fact that nature, right, which is often a scientific word for God, that nature does this wonderful thing of veiling death from us. Even though there's death all around us, you don't see dead animals everywhere. That they're hidden. That you can literally go down this road and go for a long walk and you won't see a dead creature. And yet there's death all over the place. There's death happening, decay. It's happening all over the place. But there's a type of veiling, right? And this enables a human being psychologically to maintain hope.